Today, we're going to look at the family Camelidae. As you can probably guess from the name, this includes the camels, but also contains the llamas and other related species. Camelidae is in the order Artiodactyla. At this point, I have several videos on different artiodactyls on my channel, so feel free to check out one of those if you want a fuller explanation of this order. As well as the camels, the order contains the pigs and peccaries, ruminants like cattle and deer, hippopotami, and the whales and dolphins. The interesting thing about the placement of camels within this group is that they are the most basal group in the order. This means that it can be difficult to distinguish camelid ancestors from the ancestors of other artiodactyls, since even modern-day camelids retain features seen in primitive species of other lineages. So, what are the features of Camelidae? Their feet are highly unusual among Artiodactyla. Despite the group being known as the even-toed hoofed mammals, not all of its members have hooves, and as the most basal group, it is perhaps unsurprising that camelids do not have hooves. They have 2 toes with toenails, and pads on the soles of their feet. These pads are tough and leathery, but do not provide the same protection as hooves seen in other ungulates. Another feature unique to camelids is the way they walk and run. Both legs on the same side of their body will move at the same time. This allows them to avoid tripping over themselves, but it does give them an odd swaying motion when walking. They can run, and will do so with the same odd leg movements seen as when they walk. There are 7 species of living camelid, divided across 2 genera. The Old World camelids are likely the first you think of, given the name of this family, and they are traditionally found in Asia and Africa, although there is also an invasive population in Australia. The New World llama and its relatives are only found in South America. Most camelids have been fully domesticated, a total of 4 of the 7 species. They are used for transport, meat, milk, hair and wool, and were an essential part of life for many cultures. Despite their present-day distributions, camelids are actually thought to have evolved and diversified in North America about 40 to 50 million years ago. This was during the Eocene epoch, before most other artiodactyls started to diversify. One of the earliest camelids was Protylopus, a rabbit-sized animal that had many differences to the modern species, including 4 toes on each foot. By the late Eocene, camelids like Poebrotherium were larger, around the size of a goat, and had feet with 2 toes like the modern species. Early camelids were confined to North America until about 7 million years ago. This was when the Bering land bridge was accessible. The Bering land bridge is a corridor of land that connects modern-day Alaska to Siberia. Historically, it has appeared at different time periods as the sea levels lowered, before being submerged again. This land bridge has played an important role in the distribution of many organisms in prehistory, as it allowed new species to naturally move to and from the Americas before cutting them off again, allowing them to evolve in isolation once separated from their ancestral range. The genus Paracamelus is believed to have entered Eurasia over the land bridge around 7 million years ago, and was the direct ancestor of the modern camels. A population of them did remain in North America until the late Pliocene, around 3 to 5 million years ago, where their descendants led to the high Arctic camel, living on Ellesmere Island in the Arctic Circle. As for the llamas, their ancestors were able to move into South America around 2 to 3 million years ago, and this was also due to the formation of a land bridge. This time it was the formation of the Isthmus of Panama, the land bridge connecting North and South America, a land bridge that is obviously still very much a part of the world today. The formation of this land bridge started an event known as the Great American Interchange, where animals restricted to North America were able to move into South America, and those south were able to move north. This resulted in the 2 distinct groups of fauna mingling, and leading to the fauna of the Americas as we know it today. Animals like porcupines and armadillos were strictly South American, while bears, tapirs, and yes, the llamas were strictly North American. After this exchange, animals like these had species on both continents. The llama ancestors are believed to have entered South America during this exchange, with the genus Hemiauchenus believed to be the group that made the transition, being found in North America from about 10 million years ago, but also in South America from about 2 to 3 million years ago. The North American camelids all died out by the end of the Pleistocene, about 12,000 years ago. This was likely due to several factors, such as hunting by early humans and a changing climate. However, this means that the only camelids left today are the camels in Asia and Africa and the llamas in South America, neither of which are found in this group's prehistoric range. There are two genera of camelids, Camelus with the camels and Llama with the llamas. Neither genus name is particularly original. Starting with Camelus, these are known for their ability to survive in deserts and have many adaptations to cope with arid conditions. The most noticeable is their prominent humps. These humps are stores for fatty tissues. They do not directly store water. Camels can metabolize this fat to produce energy, allowing them to continue for extended periods without food or water when needed. When this happens, the hump slowly deflates, leaving the loose skin behind, but it will start building its humps back up once food and water become more plentiful. It is worth pointing out that this fat metabolization process does still cause the camel to lose water. It requires oxygen, and so the camel loses water when it evaporates from the lungs while breathing. Camels do also have adaptations to minimize their loss of water. Their nostrils are specialized to trap water when it exhales, allowing it to minimize its water loss from breathing. Their kidneys and intestines are also specialized to maximize their ability to reabsorb water into the body. These remove as much water as possible from waste before excreting it out of the body. As a result, they produce little urine, but what they do produce is thick and syrupy, and their feces are so dry that they do not need to be dried before being used as fuel for fires. While the humps are certainly the most observable adaptations camels have to extreme conditions, they are not the only adaptations they have. Camels are able to withstand extreme shifts in temperature that would kill most animals. During a single day, their body temperature can change by about 6 degrees from the morning to the afternoon. For comparison, a human's normal body temperature is 37 degrees Celsius or 98.6 Fahrenheit. A change of less than a single degree can make someone feel unwell, and 3 degrees is usually fatal. So camels experiencing large fluctuations in body temperature over a single day with no ill effects is exceptional. Camels have oval-shaped red blood cells, whereas other mammals have circular ones. This may seem like a small difference, but the oval-shaped ones are specialized for continuing to function during dehydration, whereas the round ones will quickly start to break down. Contrary to what you likely expect, the camel's fur coat protects it from overheating by insulating it to keep it cooler. Its coat can also change color. During summer, it becomes a lighter color to reflect the light and therefore the heat more effectively. Darker colors help to absorb heat, so it will often become darker in the winter. Its long legs are also essential to keep its body as far from the ground as possible, to protect from overheating due to the intense sunlight making the ground scorchingly hot. The long legs not only keep the body physically far from the ground, but also facilitates airflow under the animal, further helping to cool it down. One of the camel species, the dromedary, even has its chest protected by a pedestal. This is a section of thick skin and tissue that rises the rest of the animal further off the ground when laying down to still allow air to pass underneath it and continue to help cooling it down. They also have other adaptations to life in the desert that are not directly related to the heat. Their mouths have a thick lining, allowing camels to feed on desert plants that are tough and often prickly like cacti without injuring themselves. They also have a nictitating membrane, which is an extra translucent eyelid seen in some animals. Camels use this to dislodge sand that gets stuck in their eyes. Their long eyelashes, ear hair, and ability to close their nostrils are all ways they prevent sand becoming an issue in the first place. We did talk about the odd gait of camelids earlier, where they move the legs on the same side of their body at the same time. However, this, along with their widened feet, performs an important function in camels. It helps to prevent them from sinking into loose sand, allowing them to move much easier through the desert environment. These adaptations all combine to create an animal that requires very little to survive in some of the Earth's harshest climates. The dromedary camel can go without drinking water for as long as 10 days when needed. These adaptations are the reasons that camels became vital to life and trade in many desert communities. The first camel is also the most common one. This is the dromedary camel, Camelus dromedarius. It is thought that around 94% of camels worldwide are dromedaries. The name dromedary is taken from Greek and Latin, meaning running camel in Greek, and a kind of camel in Latin. It is the tallest species of camel, with males getting as high as 2.4 meters or 7 feet 10 at the shoulder. It has a long curved neck, and the single hump makes them easy to identify when compared to the other camels. Their hump can be 20 centimeters or just under 8 inches tall, and can sometimes be even bigger. They are a completely domesticated species, found mostly in northern Africa, the Middle East, and into Pakistan and India. However, feral populations have been established in some parts of the world, and most notably in Australia. They were introduced into Australia to assist explorers with exploring the interior of the country, much of which is the famously inhospitable outback. While likely not great for the Australian ecosystem, it is the largest population of feral dromedary camels in the world, and so lets us have some insight into what its behaviours in the wild would be. Feral dromedaries establish home ranges, which are around 50 to 150 kilometres squared, or 19 to 58 square miles. These are only temporary, however, and over the course of a year their ranges will be over several thousand square kilometres. They are active during the day and form herds of up to 20 individuals led by a dominant male. Other males may form bachelor herds or remain solitary. Males protect the females in their herd from the other males by either standing between them or simply driving the other male away. They are typically not aggressive but can show displeasure by stamping their feet or snapping without biting. Rutting males are the exception to this and become far more aggressive, sometimes wrestling with each other to establish dominance, and also becoming much more difficult for humans to handle. There is a mating season, although its exact timing depends on the region, but it usually coincides with the rainy season. Uniquely to the dromedary camel, males will display their soft palate. This is an area of the mouth, specifically the back of the roof of the mouth. Males fight for dominance, trying to stand taller than the others or biting their competitors' legs. Females are induced ovulators. This is where they release an egg to be fertilized based on external stimuli. In the case of dromedary camels, this is induced during mating by chemicals in the male's sperm. The gestation period is 15 months, and calves are able to walk freely less than a day after being born. The time it takes to become sexually mature varies based on the individual and the region, but is typically between 3 to 5 years for both sexes. The Bactrian camel, Camelus bactrianus, is also completely domesticated. Its name comes from Bactria, an ancient civilization in Central Asia. Like its namesake, Bactrian camels live in the steppes of Central Asia, where it was fundamental to transporting goods along the Silk Road. It looks notably different from the dromedary camel in many respects, but its two humps are the most notable difference. It is not quite as tall at the shoulder as the dromedary camel, but the Bactrian camel is actually a bit larger. As a transport animal, the Bactrian camel has several advantages over the dromedary. It is stronger, able to carry up to 270 kilograms or 600 pounds at a rate of 47 kilometers per day. It is also more comfortable to ride, with the two humps giving a natural seat on the animal. It is not only adapted for extreme heat and droughts like the dromedary camel, but also for extreme cold. It is found at altitudes of up to 2,000 meters or 6,500 feet, and it experiences temperatures as low as -30 degrees Celsius or -22 Fahrenheit, or as high as 50 degrees Celsius or 122 Fahrenheit with no ill effects. During winter, it grows a long, shaggy coat to keep itself warm, and this is rapidly shed when it heads into the warmer months. They are still well adapted for droughts, but when water is available will drink an astonishing amount of it, up to 57 litres at once. Like with dromedary camels, a single male will lead a group of females. They are typically friendly, but the males can become aggressive during the breeding season. The females also experience induced ovulation, although gestation is a little shorter than the dromedary, only being around 13 months. Typically, they have one calf at a time, although twins do occasionally occur. Females can give birth once every second year. The young are able to stand, walk, and run shortly after birth. They are nursed for 1.5 years. Young remain with the mother for 3 to 5 years until they reach sexual maturity. During this time, they will help their mother to raise younger calves. While there are feral populations of Bactrian camels, none are so large or as established as the dromedary camels in Australia. The only record I could find of something similar happening with the Bactrian camels was in the United States, when the merchants in the US military imported them in the late 1800s. The initial shipment was 100 camels, but there were plans to obtain another 1,000. The planned camel cause, which by the way was their actual name, was interrupted by the Civil War. After this, the remaining surviving camels were released into the wild to survive as best they could. As a result, small herds of Bactrian camels could be found in the deserts of the southwestern United States. The amount released was likely too few to establish a self-perpetuating population, however, so they are thought to have died out by the 1950s. Feral camels are still occasionally sighted in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona, but these are unlikely to be descendants of those camels from the 1800s and are probably more recently released individuals. This brings us to the wild Bactrian camel, Camelus ferus, which is the only truly wild camel species left in the world. The first thing to cover is the difference between feral and wild. Feral animals are domesticated animals that have escaped or been released into the wild, or their descendants. Wild animals are those that have never been domesticated. In the case of Bactrian camels, wild Bactrian camels have only been considered their own species relatively recently. It is assumed that the wild Bactrian camels are the most similar in appearance to the ancient camels that first arrived from North America, since it has not been selectively bred by humans as the domesticated camels have been. They are closely related to Bactrian camels, as you can infer from the name, but are thought to have diverged from them about 1.1 million years ago. Importantly, this is before Bactrian camels were domesticated, around 4,500 years ago. This means that wild Bactrian camels are not the descendants of feral camels, but are their own species, a statement that has been confirmed by genetic testing. The two species look similar, but there are differences between them. Wild ones are a little smaller than their domesticated cousins, and their bodies look like they have been flattened side to side, giving them a somewhat squished appearance. They also have longer, more slender legs, similar to the dromedary camel, unlike the stockier Bactrian camels. Interestingly, wild Bactrian camels can survive on water that is saltier than seawater, a feat no other mammal, including the Bactrian camel, is able to achieve. Wild Bactrian camels are critically endangered, with only around 1,000 remaining. Most of these live in northern China in the Llama Wild Camel National Nature Reserve. The remainder are found in Mongolia in the Great Gobi A strictly protected area. They can travel long distances, but tend to stick to the mountains where water springs can be found. Herds usually have 2 to 15 members, but occasionally herds of up to 100 have been found. The wild Bactrian camels are not only resistant to extreme natural conditions, but also appear to have some resistance to radiation poisoning. In 1964, China tested nuclear weapons in Llama, one of the areas home to many of the camels. The area became a restricted military zone, where humans were strictly regulated due to the radiation. However, the camels in the area showed no ill effects, continuing to live and breed normally. Wild Bactrian camels are facing many threats. Poaching, climate change, and human infrastructure encroaching on their habitat are all major challenges they are facing. Hybridization from breeding with domestic Bactrian camels is also a concern, as it can lead to a loss of genetics and lessening the population of pure wild camels. Predation from wolves is also believed to have increased, as the remaining camels become easier targets. Finally, the wall at the border between China and Mongolia means that the populations have become isolated from each other. The Wild Camel Protection Foundation was established in 1997 and runs breeding centers for the camels, as well as advocating for them. It is the only conservation organization whose sole goal is the protection of these animals. The South American camelids are all in the genus Llama. There are 4 living species, 2 of which are completely domesticated. While there are similarities, they have noticeable differences to the camels. They have no hump and they have woolly coats. They have long necks, slender legs, and long pointed ears. They are better adapted to the colder climate and higher altitudes of western South America. For example, they have a high concentration of hemoglobin in their blood. This helps oxygen get through their body more efficiently, giving them an advantage in low oxygen environments. Similar to camels, they can survive without water for extended periods of time. I didn't mention it with the camels, as they have so many other adaptations, but they, along with the llamas, have an extremely long large intestine. The role of the large intestine is to reabsorb water from the waste they pass through. Since the large intestine is so large in camelids, it plays a key role in minimizing the water lost by them. This is an important adaptation that has allowed them to thrive in arid environments. While there are 4 living species of llama, they are all very closely related, so there are different ways they are placed in our phylogeny, and this has been disputed for centuries. Early explorers thought that they must have been a type of sheep, likely due to their wool, But even early scientists realized their connection to the camels, with Linnaeus placing them in the genus Camelus in the mid-1700s. While they were later moved to a separate genus, their exact relationships to each other were still disputed. More recently, they used to be considered two genera, with the Alpaca and Vicuña in one, and the Llama and Guanaco in the other. They were only combined into the single genera I am using today by the American Society of Mammalogists in 2021. Other organizations and people will still sometimes consider them as two separate genera. It is worth noting that llamas and alpacas can interbreed, so they are closely related enough that their genes can be combined to produce viable, if sterile, offspring. The first of the South American camelids is the alpaca, Llama pacos. This is one of the domesticated species, and it is kept in Peru, Bolivia, Ecuador, and Chile. It lives in the heights of the Andes, being found at altitudes of 3,500 to 5,000 meters, or 11,000 to 16,000 feet above sea level. It is believed to be descended from vicugna that were domesticated by the Incan people thousands of years ago. They are bred and kept specifically for their fur. This can be shaven and processed like a sheep's wool to create knitted and woven items like blankets, gloves, and ponchos. Their fleece comes in a variety of natural shades, so it does not need to be dyed to produce items of different colors. Alpacas are small for camelids. Adults are typically 81 to 99 centimeters or 32 to 39 inches high at the shoulder, and they weigh 48 to 84 kilograms or 105 to 185 pounds. This does make them slightly larger than vicugnas, but much smaller than the other camelids. As they were kept for their fur, they were not selectively bred for their size, likely contributing to them being much smaller than the llamas, since llamas were also used as working animals and pack horses, well, pack llamas, I guess. They have fairly good vision, but cannot see the color red. There are two breeds of alpaca. The less common one is the Surrey alpaca. Of the estimated 4 million alpacas worldwide, less than 10% are Surreys. The other breed is the Huaquea alpaca. In Peru alone, there are believed to be 2.8 million of these. The Huaquea is preferred for the superior quality of its fleece. The two breeds look noticeably different, with the Surrey having straight fur, while the Huaquea has crimped, springy fur. Alpacas live in herds led by an alpha male. The number of females he can guard are directly related to the number of resources in his territory. If an alpaca is separated from its herd, it will show responses suggesting anxiety or distress, such as an increased heart rate, pacing, and decreased appetite. For these reasons, it is recommended that when an alpaca needs to be separated, such as for clinical or handling reasons, it should always have visual contact with its herd throughout the process. When the genders are kept separate by farmers to prevent unintentional breeding, the female herd will arrange dominance in order of age. Alpacas communicate with each other with a sound that has been described as humming. They have different hums to give information, such as a distress hum when in danger, or a separation hum if they have lost their herd. They can make other sounds based on the situation. They scream if in extreme danger and can whistle and whinny as well. They can defend themselves by kicking and spitting, and are particularly hostile towards canids like coyotes and wolves. Because of this, they will sometimes even be kept with the much more docile sheep as guard alpacas to help protect the flock from predation. When fighting over females, males can neck wrestle and chest ram, which can result in severe injuries. Females may also reject males, usually if already pregnant. To show this, they will kick, spit at, or flee from the male. Pregnancy can actually be hard to see in alpacas. Sometimes farmers will introduce males to females that have already been mated just to see if the female rejects the male, indicating that they are likely pregnant. Gestation lasts 11 to 12 months. Uniquely, babies of any of the South American camelids are known as cría, from the Spanish word for offspring. Young males become sexually mature between 2 to 3 years old. Females are quite variable based on the individual, so inexperienced breeders are advised to wait until they are at least 1.5 years old to ensure they are sexually mature before attempting to mate them. The closest relative of the alpaca is the vicugna, Llama vicugna. This is actually a chance to talk for a brief minute about the rules with scientific names. If you didn't already know, scientists cannot name a species whatever they want. There are some rules that guide what they can and cannot do. These rules may be different depending on the branch of science, so the rules can be slightly different for naming plants as opposed to animals, for example. One of the rules for zoology is that scientific names cannot include special characters, such as an accent mark, apostrophe, or any other special symbol or character. So you may have noticed that the species name is Vicuña with a GN, while the common name uses the letter Ñ from the Spanish alphabet. Since this is not allowed when naming a species, the G was likely added to approximate the same sound while using only letters without special marks. None of that is about the vicuña, but it is still interesting to look at how the process of naming works. The vicuña is one of the wild species of camelid. It is found in the central Andes, from Peru and Bolivia to Argentina and Chile. Unlike the domesticated species, they are all a similar colour. They have a tawny brown on their back with white belly and neck. They are more slender than the guanicoe, the other wild South American camelid. They are very shy and have excellent hearing to detect potential threats. They feed on alpine grasses and shrubs. They lick rocks that are rich in salt and can drink salt water. Their tolerance for salt may be due to their elliptical blood cells, which have proven to be much more durable than the round ones found in other animals. This may have been needed in the high Andes, as the rocks there may cause the water to have higher levels of salt. However, as I have already mentioned, this salt tolerance is not unique to the vicuñas and other South American camelids, but is also seen in the camels. They are classified as least concerned by the IUCN, but this wasn't always the case. In the 1960s and 70s they were endangered, as there were only around 6,000 of them left. Unrestricted hunting of them was allowed until 1964, as they were desirable for their meat, hide and wool. Bolivia and Peru started the push for international cooperation to protect the vicuña by signing the Convention for the Conservation of the Vicuña in 1969. Ecuador, Chile and Argentina would join this effort at different points in the following decade. These efforts were ultimately very successful, and in 2018 it was estimated that their population had grown to over 350,000. The llama, glama, is possibly the most well known of the South American camelids. They are completely domesticated, and have been for about 6,000 to 7,000 years. While it is easier to tell them apart from its wild relatives, it is easier to confuse with the alpaca. Llamas are much larger, have a longer head and more curved ears. There are other subtle differences as well, but they also have very different behaviours. Llamas are more confident, while alpacas tend to be shyer. However, their social structures tend to be similar to those already discussed with the alpaca and vicuña. Unlike the alpacas, llamas were and are used for a variety of purposes, not just their fur. As the largest domesticated animal in South America, the llama was the only beast of burden used by the Incan Empire. Llamas were associated with nobility, and several cultures included llamas or llama body parts in the burials of notable people to assist them in the afterlife. They were also farmed for their meat, and it has been argued that widespread agriculture was only possible in pre-colonial South America due to the amount of dung llamas produced. The role of the llama in South America did not completely disappear once the continent was colonized by Europe. For example, the Spanish used them as beasts of burden to bring ore down from the mountains. However, the invading Europeans preferred to use animals they were familiar with, and so introduced horses, donkeys, sheep, and other animals to take the role that llamas traditionally held. As a result, many llama populations severely declined for a time. Some studies estimate that the population declined by 80 to 90% in the 100 years after European conquest. Today, this is not an issue. There are estimated to be more than 3 million llamas worldwide, many of which are in Peru, where they remain an important cultural icon. They are perfectly adapted to the alpine environment, so are much better at altitude than more common domesticated livestock like horses and cattle. The last of the South American camelids is the guanicoe, Llama guanicoe. This is believed to be the wild relative the llamas were domesticated from. As the other South American camelid, it is the most easily confused with the vicuña. The guanicoe is larger and less slender and is found at lower altitudes, although it is still well adapted for alpine environments. They are found largely in Argentina and Chile, especially in the Patagonia region and Isla Grande de Tierra del Fuego. However, they do also have populations in Peru, Bolivia and Paraguay. Like with the camels, guanicoes are especially good at surviving in deserts where water is scarce or non-existent. Part of their range includes the Atacama Desert, where it has not rained in some parts for more than 50 years. The Atacama Desert is actually the driest non-polar desert in the world, and the second driest behind parts of Antarctica. They are able to survive there due to the unique geology of the area. The hot desert is bordered by cool mountains, which combine to create a phenomenon known as lomas, or fog oases. Since this is a form of fog, it contains water vapor, which is carried across the desert by the wind. The fog is then absorbed by the lichen growing on cacti in the desert, acting as a water source for guanacos when they eat it. They live in small herds with one male, several females, and their cria. The male remains alert for danger and warns the herd by bleating. Guanacos are typically mild-mannered, but when threatened will spit at the intruder, and can spit accurately at a target up to 6 feet away. Guanacos are rated as least concerned by the IUCN, as they have a large range, their wild population is estimated to be over 1 million, and it is found in several protected areas around South America. However, this large-scale rating does ignore that they are likely to become extinct in 3 out of the 5 countries they are currently found in. Before finishing, I want to take a quick moment to mention the Chilihueque. I was intrigued when I saw Wikipedia label this as an extinct hypothetical species of South American camelid. So, I did some research into what it is and why it might be hypothetical. From what I could discover, it definitely existed, but the confusion comes from its status, whether it was a separate species, a subspecies, or just a different looking llama. Early European explorers described a camelid domesticated by the locals on the Isla of Mocha, an island 35 kilometers off the coast of Chile. This camelid was dubbed the Chilihueque and was originally given the scientific name of Llama araucana. In 2016, Westbury et al. Performed extensive genetic testing on bones of Chilihueque to try and determine where they fit into South American camelids. They determined that these were domesticated guanicoe, and the name Chilihueque was simply the local term for a guanicoe. If accepted, these results would finally put to rest the mystery of the Chilihueque, which has been disputed since they were first discovered by Europeans in 1615. I hope you enjoyed this video. Camelids are fascinating animals with many unique adaptations to enable them to survive in some of the harshest environments on Earth. They have also been an essential part of many human cultures for thousands of years, being used for hair, wool, meat, milk, transport, and as beasts of burden. Thank you for listening, and feel free to suggest another group of animals you want to see me cover in the comments.